Hello and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Trophy Hunting, the Newcastle United based series where our aim is to finish on a podium. It's been a while since the last video, so we actually have 3 Newcastle United games to go over, so we're going to jump straight into it. The first of those was game week 70. Newcastle United were at home to Manchester United. We won 4-1. It was a big win. However, as you can see here, unfortunately, no big rewards. The main classic team, the no clean sheet kind of killed us. We weren't very far away at all from the podium, only 50 points. A clean sheet from Pope and Trippier probably goes most of the way to getting on that podium. In the in-season team, we're a bit further off, obviously, per score by Livramento, and we actually went for Barnes in this one, which will start to become a more regular feature, as this was his first big game, I think. We had him in the other team as well, but unfortunately we had Dean Henderson, which didn't do much. So yeah, 14 essence in total from this game week. Nothing huge. Moving on to the midweek. Unfortunately, Newcastle United's rescheduled game due to the cup final against Crystal Palace was sandwiched into a UCL midweek. So unfortunately we're in the All-Star, which we knew was going to be difficult. However, we actually got really close here. In the classic team, Pope gave away a penalty. He managed to save the penalty and get the clean sheet as we won 5-0. Trippier over 100 and an assist. Isak captain with no A and a goal, which is slightly unfortunate. And then we put Barnes in this team. Bruno put a score with a yellow card. And then the in-season team, which isn't really in-season because it's all-star, unfortunately. Yes, Pope again. We went for Livramento. And then Tonali, who got an assist. He's again captain, which was the wrong choice. And then Jacob Murphy. As you can see, both similar scores. But yeah, 60 points off the podium on this one. And 56 points on this one. I was slightly torn whether to drop Bruno out of this one, go for a front three of Isak, Barnes and Murphy. We decided against that. That would have put us, I'd say, easily top 10, maybe pushing towards the podium, which is slightly disappointing. Trippier looks to be back to his best. As you can see, we actually put a limited team out with the limited Pope we picked up with Trippier and Barnes and Murphy. But for some silly reason, I put Tchouaméni in this one and we managed to get a tier 3. If we had put anyone half decent in here, we would be tier 1s quite comfortably, which is disappointing. So yeah, just a few boxes from this and tier 3 limited, which was pretty bad. Moving on to the weekend just gone. 4-1 loss away to Aston Villa. Given the great run of form we've been on, I was quite high on this game, whereas maybe a few weeks ago I wouldn't have been. Yeah, this just was probably the worst case scenario, to be honest. We lost 4-1. The D1 in-season teams relegated. The D1 classic teams relegated. Yeah, just a complete mess, really. And that is compounded by the fact that this upcoming game week we are at home to Ipswich, which is disappointing. This specialist team managed to do quite well. This actually had a few Newcastle United legacy players, so we'll call it in here. We had Darlow, who now seems to be getting a game for Leeds, who have just been promoted. We had Anson Maximin, Josh Cullen and Egan Riley, both doing really well. And then Trippier absolutely killed us by getting a 36. We were only 38 points away from the tier 1 and a jersey, which would have been really nice. But yeah, Trippier absolutely kills in this one, unfortunately. But yeah, moving on to the upcoming game week 74. Like I've said, we are at home to Ipswich Town, who are in the relegation zone, about to be relegated. However, as you can see here, we do have this collector's event. So this collector's event was one I've kind of been eyeing up for a while since it got announced, because I knew the fixture we had. As you can see down here, the rewards: top 5 get a jersey, top 3 get a signed jersey. I presume that is Newcastle related. I presume it's going to be a Newcastle signed jersey and a Newcastle jersey. It wouldn't really make sense if it wasn't. But yeah, this is something I am going to partake in. However, I haven't really made up my mind on what I'm going to do for it. So we do obviously have the in-season and the classic Pope. We actually have a limited Pope as well now. But it's just whether we decide to completely prioritise. If we were to completely prioritise this, obviously we'd go Pope, we'd go Trippier. Midfield's quite a tough choice currently because we've got Murphy, Barnes, Tonali, Bruno, Joe Linton. We've got Isak or Barnes up front. But yeah, it's whether we decide to prioritise this compared to the normal Prem comps. As I did say, we are relegated, so we're in D2 for everything, which is really disappointing. It's the week you don't want to be in D2 in. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm not quite sure which team to start first. What I did kind of play with was maybe putting limited Nick Pope into a collector's event, but then am I limiting myself to not have a good chance of actually getting that top 3 and the podium? We're just going to play around a bit. We're going to go Pope in nets for now, or do we start building the classic teams first in season and then see what's left? I think we're going to do that. We're going to provisionally build the main teams first, because I think we will have enough left over to the point where we can still put a competitive team out in the jersey competitions, and hopefully it doesn't completely dismantle these teams. So midfield is a position I've been struggling with recently, mainly because, well, probably for the past 2 years, if not 3, I've been putting Bruno in at centre mid, and unfortunately he's just done an absolutely rotten run of form. He absolutely needs a goal or an assist to even break 55, most of the time to even break 45, which is, it's really tough. You're looking at even a 5-0 win here versus Palace, he's only getting 8A, which is just really bad at the moment. It really is. So yeah, the choices, I just don't think it makes sense to put Bruno in here at the moment, given the form he's in. So the choices are Tonali, Barnes or Murphy. I'm pretty sure the team will be unchanged again, would be my guess for now. Obviously, I'm recording this on Wednesday, so no concrete information yet, but I think we're going to go for Barnes for now. Isak up front, and then the extra position, it kind of makes sense to go with Murphy. The captain's a tough one. However, I am going to go with Trippier. I think Isak's form at the moment is a bit shaky. I believe he's got an injury personally. I don't believe he's 100%. I think it will be addressed at the end of the season, but he just cannot get AA at the moment. He's struggling to score, which is just wild for him, given the crazy run of form that he was on. But yeah, I just don't think he is captain material at the moment, and I think Trippier is getting into that kind of form where if he gets a DA, he will pull out 100. So yeah, I think it makes sense to captain Trippier in this one. This will be the classic team. We are playing that front 3 we actually thought about going for in the midweek versus Palace, so that's quite nice. And then the in-season team, we're going to start off by just chucking Isak up front. I think that makes sense, and the rest of the team needs to be in season. We'll go with Pope. Defender, this is kind of what I've been struggling with, whether we either double up on Trippier or we put Livramento in like we have been doing previously. He hasn't been scoring great, so I think it kind of makes sense to put Trippier in here. The midfield pick, I am going to go with Tonali, and that is only because I will be picking Jacob Murphy in the extra position. You might be thinking, why am I not picking Barnes? But I think it kind of makes sense to put Barnes in the special comp, as he will, or the Isak forward cards, you don't really have a good forward, and I think it kind of makes sense to put Barnes in there to make sure I'm still competitive. And then the captain is again a tricky one. Do I double up on Trippier, or do I hope this is the kind of game Isak can get double decisive? And I think I'm going to risk it in this team and hope he can. So we're going to lock that in. So moving over to the jersey comps, the collector's event. Obviously, we are allowed one non-Newcastle player. I'm not sure whether it makes too much sense to do that. We will kind of see what fixtures we've got outside of Newcastle, but yeah, it looks pretty bleak at a glance. Obviously, that's just defence, but yeah. So I think defender, we've obviously got the choice of the back 4, as I've got 3 Trippiers. Do we triple up on Trippier? Is that too risky? Do we put Livramento in? Quite a tricky choice. I'm going to put Trippier in there for now. Obviously, we are allowed all scarcities in this one, which is kind of nice. But obviously, it opens the field up quite wide for the rest of the collectors. I think it makes sense to put Bruno in here. I really do. I think it is the most sensible place to put him. I've not been putting him in main teams the past week or so. I think ever since that Man United game, I've been putting him in maybe like secondary Prem lineups or specialist comps, but I think this is kind of a safe place to put him. Obviously, I want to still be able to get that upside if he does get a goal or an assist, but it's just really difficult to put him in a top lineup at the moment. Up front, we're going to go with Barnes. I think this is actually still really a strong team. This isn't far off what maybe a week ago I would have had as one of my strongest teams for Isak. And it's just about that extra position. Do we have that non-Newcastle player that could slot in here from maybe a bit of a differential. We do have Caicedo, who is on reasonable form. I'm not sure it's worth breaking up a stacked, but Caicedo, we've got Sessegnon, who I really like. He's got a good game away at Southampton, but he needs a DA to get a high score, which is a bit of a risk. And that is kind of everything. Obviously, João Pedro recorded. So yeah, it's kind of going to be a Newcastle player we do end up putting in here. So the options we do have is maybe a Gordon off the bench, which doesn't really seem too smart. We've got Burn, Shaw, Livramento, and that actually seems to be it. I'm trying to think if we have any other midfield. We don't have two Tonales. We do have a Joe Linton. So it's Joe Linton or one of the other back four that we haven't used. I don't think it makes sense to put Joe Linton. Yeah, I don't think he quite has that peak potential. He's struggling to get over 60 even with DAs, which is kind of mental. But yeah, so it is going to be one of the back four. It's whether we go for Burn, Livramento, or Fabian Shaw. I think we're going to go for Livramento. We can't play the limited one in here, but the rare one does have more XP, so it kind of makes sense to put him in here, as the XP differential is 5%, which could be quite big in this comp. So yeah, this is the team we're going to put in the collector's event, and we are going to captain Barnes in this one, as if he gets a DA, he could get quite a few, and his A is reasonable for a forward, so we're going to lock that in. So yeah, there are the three teams going out this weekend. I'm reasonably confident with these. I'll be honest, I'm really disappointed they're not in D1. I think that really is a killer. I'm hoping it doesn't turn out nasty and we would have won D1, which would be really unfortunate. So yeah, that is everything in this one. Hopefully we have a good result this Ipswich, and maybe even pull a jersey or a signed one. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.